Check this out. XRP ETFs are grabbing 35% of Bitcoin ETF flows, and Bloomberg is now saying there's a 95% chance an XRP ETF gets approved this year. Yep, you heard that right, 95%. The team at Bloomberg, who've been doing an awesome job covering all things Bitcoin spot ETFs and altcoins like XRP, are feeling confident about this one. It's exciting to think this could happen during alt season. If everything lines up just right, fingers crossed. Honestly, I still think we're heading for a crazy alt season either way, but hey, this is just one more news headline to add to the mix. It's not going to hurt, right? Now, about the whole ETF flows impacting the price of XRP, this is something I've talked about so many times, so I'll keep it short. In my opinion, this kind of thing matters over years, even decades. Over time, huge amounts of money could flow into the XRP ecosystem that wouldn't otherwise. Here's the thing, if people are buying an ETF backed by actual XRP, it's tapping into a scarce, finite, and even deflationary asset thanks to how it's coded. There's only so much XRP out there. Opening up more ways and platforms for people to buy it will naturally make it even scarcer. The odds of that having a serious impact seem pretty high to me. There's a lot more to unpack here, but before I dive deeper, let me be super clear. I don't have a financial background, and this isn't financial advice. Please don't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I say or write. Always do your own research. I haven't had the chance to mention this yet, but here's some concerning news, though it might not feel quite as alarming if you're into crypto. For the first time in history, the US national debt has surpassed 37 trillion. Yep, 37 trillion. Take a look. It's right there on the board. And unfortunately, this number isn't slowing down anytime soon. Why? Because there's no real effort in Congress to address it. Tackling the national debt would require major reforms and significant cuts in spending. The truth is, the issue isn't about how much money the government brings in through taxes. That part's fine. The real issue is how we're spending it, but politically, cutting spending is a tough sell, so no one wants to touch it. What does this mean for the future? Well, if nothing changes, it's like we're on a train speeding toward a broken bridge. Without intervention, we're heading straight for a crash, and it won't be pretty. Unfortunately, it seems like action will only happen once we're already in serious trouble. Let's hope we figure out a way to course correct before it's too late. Unless we somehow manage to outgrow all of this economically, and hey, maybe we could, things aren't looking great, but let's not dive too deep into that for now. Instead, let's talk about something exciting. Cryptocurrencies. Being a crypto holder is pretty awesome, don't you think? Sure, I get it. Cryptos are considered risk-on assets, so they tend to trade similarly to stocks. But here's the thing, they're scarce, finite, and we're still so early. Most people haven't even dipped their toes into crypto yet. Heck, almost no one even knows about XRP, for example. I came across an interesting article from Cointelegraph that I wanted to share. It's called "Here's What Bitcoin Did While the US Added to Its 37 Trillion Debt," and it really puts things into perspective. So back in 2010, US debt was at 13 trillion and Bitcoin was worth less than $1. Fast forward to 2025, US debt skyrocketed to over 36 trillion and Bitcoin hit around 112K. Crazy, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is to highlight something simple but important. While XRP and Bitcoin are often treated as risk-on assets today, first off, it's important to remember that this might not always be the case. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and XRP could be treated as hedges against uncertain times in the future, similar to how gold is viewed. But even without that, they're scarce and finite, so that fact alone still holds weight. Whereas the real story, the value of the dollar has dropped dramatically when compared to Bitcoin. In fact, it's lost over 99% of its value against Bitcoin. The same goes for XRP. It's the same story. The dollar just keeps going down and down. You really think that's going to change anytime soon? Not a chance. These crypto assets are scarce and finite, and that's powerful. XRP in particular is built to last. Why? Because it's functionally useful, something that gives it real staying power. As long as a cryptocurrency has a purpose and solves real world problems, it's not going anywhere. So my friends, don't underestimate it. The United States, the biggest capital market on the planet, is going all in on crypto, and it's looking like XRP is getting a huge thumbs up in the process. This is as good as it gets, seriously. Here's the latest headline from Cointelegraph. US crypto ETF approval odds surge to 90% or higher, Bloomberg analysts say. According to Bloomberg analysts Eric Balchunas and James Seyffart, the chances of U.S. regulators approving a wave of crypto exchange-traded funds, ETFs, are now nearly certain. This marks a major pro-crypto shift at the SEC. On Friday, Seyffart shared in a social media post that he and Balchunas have bumped up their odds of approval to 90% or higher, thanks to what they called very positive engagement from the SEC. Here's the post I want to share with you. Let me pull it up full screen. It's from James Seyffart, one of the pros over at Bloomberg, who's been doing an excellent job tracking everything happening with crypto and ETFs. They've really been on top of this. In the post, James mentions that he and Eric Balchunas are now putting the odds of approval for most spot crypto ETF filings at 90% or higher. That's huge news. According to them, engagement from the SEC is a really positive sign. Now, when it comes to XRP specifically, check this out. They highlight the firms that have filed S1S for spot crypto ETFs, and the biggest list is under XRP. I've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. XRP has the most interest and demand for spot ETFs compared to any other altcoin. If I'm not mistaken, there are still 11 firms that have filed for an XRP spot ETF. Solana's holding strong in second place with 7.7. There's definitely a lot of buzz around it, but let's talk about XRP. It's absolutely crushing it. The interest in XRP is off the charts. Honestly, could it be any clearer that XRP is a standout in the crypto world? It's a winner, plain and simple. Here's the exciting part. Most people won't fully realize this until 2025. If you're reading this in 2025, congratulations. You're ahead of the curve and miles ahead of most people. That's the reality. So pat yourself on the back. You're already winning. Of course, there's still more to unfold, but the groundwork is already there. Now let's take a look at what's being shared. Check out this column. Under XRP, they've got likely, yes, listed for whether the SEC currently views it as a commodity. That's consistent for most of the others, except for SWI and Tron, where it's marked unknown. According to the experts at Bloomberg, the SEC might now see XRP as a commodity. That's quite the shift, isn't it? For years, the SEC argued that XRP, by its very existence, was a security. But now it seems like they've changed their tune. Why the change? Well, the decision makers who once pushed that narrative are no longer around. The previous leadership, who stirred up so much controversy, has moved on, paving the way for a fresh perspective. So what does this mean for XRP? It's looking very promising. Many are betting that approval for XRP decisions is almost a sure thing. In fact, looking ahead to 2025, the odds of approval are estimated at a solid 95%. Nick Garassi is even more optimistic and believes things are looking even better than that. Nick Garassi, the president of the ETF store, knows this world inside and out. It's his expertise. He keeps a close eye on everything happening in the ETF space and had an interesting take on this topic. He said, yep, approval is highly likely for all of this by 2025. He even mentioned staking in spot ETH ETFs and in-queue creations and redemptions. But here's the kicker. Nick thinks the biggest question isn't about ETH, it's whether BlackRock will jump into the race for spot Solana and XRP ETFs, along with index-based crypto ETFs. And honestly, he believes they will. Here's the scoop straight from Nick Garassi, president of the ETF store. He's convinced that BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with around 11 trillion under management, is gearing up to dive into this space, bringing their massive client base along for the ride. And what does that mean? Higher demand for XRP. And honestly, he's probably right. Why would BlackRock, of all companies, sit back and let their competitors take the lead here? It doesn't make sense. You think they're going to pass up the chance to make profits on an XRP ETF? No way. That money's there for the taking, and you know they're going to go for it. Sure, they haven't jumped in just yet, but trust me, it's only a matter of time. They're not going to let this opportunity slip by. It would be a huge mistake. We're talking about one of the top cryptos by market cap, right up there with Bitcoin and Ethereum, not counting stable coins. It seems like XRP, the third largest coin by market cap, isn't getting the attention it deserves. But let's be real. Do we really think that's going to last? I don't think so. Big players are definitely going to take notice. Now, here's an interesting take. If XRP ETFs capture 35% of Bitcoin ETF flows, which Bloomberg now says has a 95% chance of approval, it could have a big effect on XRP's price. But honestly, I'm not fully sold on this idea. Don't get me wrong, it'll definitely make an impact, especially if a significant amount of money flows in, but I don't see it being enough to completely shift things in the short term. Still, XRP's potential is huge regardless of all this. I just don't know how they're coming up with these numbers. If 35% of the flows from Bitcoin ETFs were to move into XRP, let's break that down a bit. Here's the thing. This is pretty much how the crypto space works. Forget the exact percentages for a moment. The general pattern stays true. As Bitcoin hits its peak in a cycle, profits are often taken out and Bitcoin dominance starts to drop. Those funds typically flow into other major coins like Ethereum and XRP. From there, it trickles down to mid cap and small cap coins. That's just how things tend to go in crypto. Now, do I think it'll happen at that exact percentage with ETFs? That's harder to say. Let me start with this because it's important to mention. You might remember hearing some people argue that we wouldn't see an alt season because of all the money going into Bitcoin ETFs. The idea was that ETF buyers aren't directly purchasing crypto, so they're not using exchanges like Coinbase or Binance. And since they're sticking to ETFs, they're not exploring or buying other crypto assets. Honestly, I think that perspective misses the mark. Have you heard people saying there won't be an alt season because all the money from Bitcoin ETFs will just stay in Bitcoin? Honestly, arguments like that don't make much sense. Most trading still happens on crypto exchanges. So the idea that Bitcoin ETFs would completely stop alt seasons is pretty far-fetched. It feels like wishful thinking from Bitcoin maximalists. That said, there's still an open question here. What happens when people start taking profits from Bitcoin ETFs? When they begin selling near the peak of the cycle, which seems pretty likely, how will that impact the market? It's something we'll just have to wait and see. So here's the thing. People who are buying crypto ETFs probably aren't the same folks who are suddenly going to open a Coinbase account and dive into the crypto world. If they were, they'd likely already be trading crypto directly instead of sticking with ETFs, right? That's just the vibe I get. Now, let's say more crypto ETFs like Ethereum or even XRP get approved. Are these same people going to cash out and jump into those? You know, honestly, there's no data to say one way or the other. It's all speculation at this point, and everyone's guess is as good as mine. These ETF investors might act differently than the usual crypto crowd, so who knows for sure. That said, it's not a crazy idea to think it could happen, whether you're leaning toward a yes or a no. In fact, Crypto Basic mentioned that if this catches on, it could push the price of XRP to $30. So here's the thing. I'm just sitting here thinking, sure, maybe XRP could hit $30, but honestly, I'm not convinced an ETF approval would be the main reason for that. Historically, we've seen massive outflows from Bitcoin lead to XRP gaining big time market dominance. At one point, it was over 30%, but let's be real, I don't see XRP getting back to that level of dominance again. And it's not because there's anything wrong with XRP, definitely not. It's just that there are so many more coins on the market now. Even if XRP has its best run ever in terms of price growth, its slice of the market pie is naturally going to look smaller. Why? Because all those other coins, even the little ones, add up and take their share. That's really all I'm saying here. I'm not totally sold on this argument, but the idea of XRP hitting those heights, who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. What I'm saying is, if it does, I don't think this specific point will be the reason, but hey, it definitely won't hurt. It's like adding fuel to the fire. It's exciting, and it's just more evidence stacking up. Once an ETF gets approved, that's another win. It's just one more thing on what feels like an endless list of reasons why XRP is a winner. It's not going anywhere. It's a solid fixture in the crypto space. Honestly, we've already won. The crazy part, most of the world hasn't even caught on yet. If you're reading this in 2025, even if you're just getting started, there's still time. I genuinely believe that the potential for massive returns is still there, especially if you're in it for the long haul. I've been holding XRP for 7.5 years now, and it's that long-term mindset that pays off. If you invest a significant amount of money and have a specific target in mind, sure, you might achieve life-changing wealth relatively quickly. Not saying that's impossible, but for most people who might invest a smaller, more modest amount, the key is having patience and a long enough time horizon. With that approach, you can still build incredible wealth, even with something like XRP. That said, this kind of opportunity won't last forever. At some point, whether it's 10 or 20 years from now, there will be so much money already in XRP that the chance for massive growth will be gone. It's just like Bitcoin. 10 years ago, it was much easier to get rich with it. Now, with so much money already in Bitcoin, those opportunities are much harder to come by. The same will eventually happen here. The same thing is going to happen with XRP. It's just a matter of time. Honestly, I think XRP is a much better opportunity than Bitcoin. To me, it's the clear winner here. It couldn't be more obvious, and I really believe it's a stronger investment opportunity than Bitcoin. Of course, I'm not a financial advisor, so please don't make any buying or selling decisions just because you heard it from me. That wouldn't be a smart move. Always do your own research.